All right, welcome. Hey, this is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm Jeremy, your host, coming to you from allpointstv.com. Glad to be with you today. Going to be talking about medical marijuana. Going to be talking about what else is going on in the county and then the state here in Michigan, this wonderful, beautiful state. Happy spring, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful Easter. Hope you had a good time with the family. It's really what it's all about. And I just want to welcome you to the show. We got a lot of exciting things going on. The Genesee County Compassion Club is a great place to be at, and we like to let you know what's happening down at the club, of course. Keep you guys informed, keep you in tune with what's going on. Back in the studios today with my man John. John, how's it going? He's back over here behind the cam.
Really good, really good. Just, enjoying, I guess it's a half-hearted attempt to actually have good weather for us, but it's doing okay.
At least it's warm, right? It's warming up, and we got stuff melting off.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
The back roads are basically like a mud bog. I don't know if you get out back in the country area much. John.
I can imagine with the rains and stuff we've had.
I know you guys here in the city have to deal with these horrendous potholes. I like to call them craters, but if you get out on the country roads where there's no more pavement, I can tell you it's not any better. In fact, you better have four-wheel drive and be careful where you go because they are unreal. But not to banter on the roads. Everybody knows they suck. I definitely want to say I'm happy about the weather. And spring is here. This is our first spring show of the year 2016, and of course with spring we always have a very exciting event coming up at the G3C. It's our annual 420 party. It's our club's anniversary, and we want to invite you there. It's obviously on April 20th, hence 420, so it'll be an all-day celebration. We're gonna have speakers, performers, food, fun, contest, twist off, judging. It's going to be a blast. It always is. It's fantastic. You guys make it a wonderful thing, and we try to do the best that we possibly can for you to be able to enjoy it. It's really a day of celebration, of freedom, and of relief. And that's what basically we're getting for each other is relief. Relief from all the things that weigh us down or hurt us or whatever. Cannabis helps us do that, and we're very thankful to be able to have that freedom. So we encourage you to celebrate it with us on April 20th. Mark your calendars. I believe it is a Wednesday. Middle of the week. We'll be open all day long. Celebration goes all day. We have our special events usually hashed out right around 420. So it's a good time to be at the party, if you know what I mean. Like I said, we usually have food. We're going to have backyard barbecue this year. No exception. Excellent food. Stuff to make you want to slap your mama over. No, I'm just kidding. I love my mom. All right, but mark your calendars for that one. It's going to be a fun time, and we definitely want to see you there. This year will be no exception. Also coming up here in April, just want to make quick mention, we have our regular monthly soup kitchen serving down at the North End Soup Charities there with Catholic Charities. It's a privilege for us to be able to do that. We love being able to do so, and we want to have you help us out if you can on April 29th. It's the last Friday of the month. That way it's an easy way to remember when it's going down. It only is a short afternoon. That's all it takes. But it is an opportunity to give back, and we're thankful we get to do so. So I want to give a shout out to all the people who showed up last month at the Soup Kitchen. You guys rock. You made that happen, and a lot of people went home with a smile on their face and a full belly, and that's what counts. All right, other things we got going up here. Obviously, I know most of you have got to be getting ready for this, being that the first Saturday in April is right around the corner. And of course, with that, and for at least if you've been in the closet or you've been in the dark, you might not know about this, but about for the past, 30, 40 years, literally every first Saturday in April is Michigan's annual Hash Bash. And of course, this happens down in Ann Arbor. And if you haven't been there before, it's a fun thing to go to. It is a lot of information given out. It's a celebration of freedom. It's a celebration of personal rights. John Sinclair, who helped start this Hash Bash years ago, who was arrested and given a year in jail for a joint, quite preposterous. But that's what he did, and he spoke out for people's civil rights and for the ethical treatment of all people. And and I think that's no less needed today than it was back when he started Hash Bash. And so I would implore you to take part and participate if you're a freedom lover, not just a marijuana lover, but just an activist all the way around. You want to be involved. Hash Bash is a great way to meet a lot of wonderful people who are actually involved. So I'd encourage you, get down there on Saturday. It happens all day long. If you get down there nice and early in the morning, there's usually a nice rally right at the Diag, and I know this year's no exception. They're going to have Tommy Chong there. along with a whole slew of other fantastic, wonderful speakers. I know our one of our club members, Darren McCarty from the Red Wings, is going to be there as well. So this is going to be a huge event, and I'm sure you guys have heard about it. I'm sure it'll be reported in the paper. But what I'd like to be sure of is that you don't miss out. So get down to Hash Bash this Saturday if you can. It's going to be a fantastic time. Also followed after the speakers and so on ceremonies at the Hash Bash at the Diagonal. There's always the Monroe Street Fair happening right beside it, right afterwards, and that's also a wonderful time. So if you get down there, make sure you mind your manners, make sure you obey the laws. You'll have no issues with the police. Just do what the right thing is and abide by state law. You'll be perfectly fine. Don't smoke on campus. That's a foolish thing to do. So, all right, remember those are students. Next event coming up, I do want to make mention of, and this is kind of a new thing. There's a magazine in Michigan, and I'm not sure how widespread they are, so forgive my lack of knowledge. But as far as I know, they're called Hybrid Life, is helping to put on a very special event here at the end of April in Lansing. And the event is known as the Extreme CanaQuest. And this is an event that's being held, let me pull this up here, get the specifics for you. I'm looking at the speakers right now, so let me back up just a second here. But this is basically, it's going to be a weekend of education, of ceremonies and celebration, and a time for people in the medical marijuana business or people who are looking to get into the business. Basically, the entrepreneurs in this industry. This is a thing that's going to be geared for you, around you. It is the Extreme CanaQuest and Expo. So you want to check that out online. You can pull it up by going to expo.hybrid.life. Or just Google Crystal Trichome Awards. It's hard to say. Crystal Trichome Awards. You want to check this out. It's going to be a black tie event, but it's still inexpensive to go to the awards ceremony. I believe the cost is only $20, so it's pretty low cost. If you want to check out the other events that they have going on all weekend long, I'd encourage you, like I said, go to the website, check it out. They have a slew of amazing speakers. Just to name a few, Verge Bernero, the mayor of Lansing, is one of the featured speakers, along with, let me pull up their names here. Just getting the name here. Mr. Dakota Cerna, he was the Marine who testified in front of the Senate and got kicked out for, I guess, expressing his freedoms. Also going to have Maria Green there, activist, clinical herbalist from Down to Earth Holistic. Roy Schmidt, former state representative. Among quite a few other very influential people and very exciting people that are involved in this marijuana business are going to be at this event speaking. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Hello, Mr.
Hello.
Eric Gunnels, esteemed councilman from Thetford Township. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, my friend.
Welcome back.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Yeah, glad to have you with me today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Just talking about the Crystal Trichome Awards. I'm sure you've probably heard of those.
Yeah, I have. Just
Going
recently.
on
Yep.
down in Lansing, the end of April. And I was just telling the folks all about the speakers and the different things that they're going to have there. But one thing I also wanted to make mention of on the program today is that they also have, obviously, award ceremony. But this is a you participate, you pick the winner ceremony. So you can go on there and vote for different groups on there, such as like favorite caregiver, best community outreach center, best dispensary. But I'll let you guys check out the categories. But this is kind of cool, and the fact that it's going to be voted on by you. So you go online and you can make your vote, and then basically whoever gets the most votes wins. Kind of like a People's Choice Award kind of a thing.
Awesome.
They've got, I'll get some of the categories here. Best glass company, best law firm, best testing facility, best cannabis association, activist of the year, best tech product. This is all Michigan-based stuff. So if you go on and you look at the different people or groups or companies that have been nominated, they're all Michigan-based places. So it's a way for us to sort of represent our industry and help promote it as well. So I encourage you guys to check that out. You can vote for yourself. I know that one of our caregivers from the G3C is listed on there as favorite caregiver, and obviously there's a lot of caregivers out there, so they all couldn't be named. But check it out, make your vote count, and we'll see. And then I encourage you to check out the event. It's going to be a lot of fun too. So I wanted to get into a couple of news items today. It's kind of it for the events, but some of the news items I'm sure you're going to be able to help me out on. Because the first one we're going to dive into today is the bust that happened up in Clio. This was at the Clio Caregiver Connection. It's in Genesee County, which has been known, for the most part, as kind of a safe haven for patients and caregivers here in Michigan, and also for some of the growing patient outreach centers, as I'll call them today. But you know, a lot of folks from around the state have sort of had this attitude that, oh, Genesee County's fine, you can't get, you know, in trouble in Genesee County, and it come to find out, actually, you can obviously get in trouble in Genesee County, as Eric knows as well.
Sure.
And you know, it's very important you follow the rules no matter where you go, and dot your I's and cross your T's. But here's a place in Clio that you know, it's been around for, I want to say 4 years now.
At least since 2011.
Okay, so there we go, even 5 years.
Sure.
Now were they approved in their community? Do you know? I guess I was kind of wondering that.
I think it was more or less on the basis of tolerance.
Okay, so there wasn't like a zoning ordinance that they applied for, and they just were accepted.
Right.
Sure. And it happens a lot.
Right, and that's pretty typical. I mean, even in my community of Thetford Township, we have multiple dispensaries or facilities or whatever you want to call them. We have a plethora now.
Caregivers.
Right. But we have facilities in Thetford, and you know, yet there's been no ordinance, there's been no permissive talk about it. It's just been a tolerance type basis.
Yeah. So in other words, there's been no guidance from the township as far as what these businesses should do, if they should be there, or how they should operate.
Sure.
However, there hasn't been you know, any nuisances filed, or you know, there hasn't been any preventative ordinances passed.
No.
So you know, it kind of leaves them in this sort of quasi state of, should they exist, should they be there, if they are there, how should they function, and or be tolerated.
Right, and I just try to blanket term it as being, you know, it's just safe access in general. You know what I mean? We want to promote safe access, whatever that tends to be. If it's in the form of a compassion center, a collective, dispensary, whatever that is, safe access in general is the blanket terminology which we need to support. Now, we can argue all day about the specifics of that and how it should work. Yeah. And you know,
and I think we'll get kind of cutting to the chase on that. But I think you're making a good point.
But let's just focus on safe access. Let's just go with what the law was intended to do.
Well, and I want to quote here from MLive, because it's kind of interesting, you know, and Eric's bringing up a good point, talking about what is safe access. Obviously, it's something that, you know, the voters wanted to provide for when we passed the law. Obviously, it's something that patients need to have, is safe access. And you know, not just safety from criminals, but safety from
police,
prosecution,
or prosecution,
as well.
Absolutely.
So, but this is from
no one wants to be afraid that the cops are going to come in any moment. You know what I mean? When they go to a place like that, we want to know that the law enforcement understands and recognizes what's being done there, and that these people that are coming into these places have licenses, they're valid, they're registered with the state. That's it. I mean, all interactions should be considered codified under the Act. It should be. Although we've had, you know, court rulings that try to erode away at that, I still disagree with those court rulings. I think that, you know, they need to either be overturned, we need to revisit them, or we debate about some other way, or legislate them out, or you know, change that by legislation effort.
Well, this is from MLive, and I'm quoting Judge Archie Heyman ruled Monday, March 28th, that a temporary restraining order shuttering Clio Caregiver Connection will remain in effect after prosecutors asked a judge for padlock the business up to a year under the state's nuisance ordinance. Genesee County Prosecutor David Layton filed a nuisance ordinance violation March 3rd against the business after an investigation by the Flint Area Narcotics Group alleged the business at 105 North Mill Street was acting outside of the state's Medical Marijuana Act. It says here, and quote, dispensaries are not permitted under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, Layton said after Monday's hearing. We're merely following the law. And like you said, Eric, there have been numerous different court cases that have, in our opinion, I would say, have muddied the law, or certainly not provided clarity.
Done the opposite of what they're intended to do.
Indeed. If you look here in the article, actually, David Layton goes on to say that, said legislators or courts need to provide better, more clarity on the state's medical marijuana law. And I would argue back that you're exactly right. The courts have not provided clarity. They have provided more areas of exclusion of protection, more of a muddied interpretation of when is or what is acceptable based on what circumstances, and it should have been a very clear-cut guideline as to who should be protected and who isn't. It kind of leads me to the next part of this, because if we look at the different parts of the law and so on, I mean, right now, there was just another article posted on MLive that the number of patients and caregivers in Michigan is increasing. And I think that we're talking about something that's key here, is that if we look at the numbers here, and I want to get to this article from MLive, and I encourage you guys to pull it up because it has a database in there where you can search by county how many patients are registered through Michigan's act. So it doesn't give out names or anything like that. It's merely
statistic numbers. Yeah.
Just numbers, but I would encourage you to check it out. This is an interesting article here from MLive talking about how it has gone up. 2012, the number of patients registered totaled 124,000 and change for all of Michigan. 4 years later, the number has risen to 182,000 and change. So you got a difference there of nearly 60,000 increase. That'd be nearly a 50% increase over the 120,000 in a 4-year period. If we look at the caregiver numbers here, I think the caregiver numbers have also increased, but it doesn't actually give the numbers on here. But I think the question is, obviously the caregiver number, first of all, is much lower than the patient number. I think it somewhere around the 50,000.
Right, or lower. Yeah.
Or lower.
Right.
So if you've got 180,000 patients out there, and granted, caregivers can take care of up to 5 patients according to the law. So there should consequently be less caregivers than patients. But it brings us back to, as a patient, and having access to the medication that they need. How do they have that access? When we have obviously clearly a lack of caregivers, and then on top of that, we have clearly a lack of caregivers being able to provide their services to patients.
Sure.
When you have a place like now we don't know the details of each individual case, but many of these places that have been operating as collectives, dispensaries, patient outreach centers are operating under the assumption that they are a registered caregiver and that they are working with registered patients. And it's being brought down on basically by these court cases and by different forms of law enforcement that these caregivers can only deal with the 5 people that they are registered to the state through. So on the flip side of that, it leaves the patient with an inability or lack of access to their medication because of the fact that they're limited to one source, either themselves or by designating one of these caregivers that's out there. So the problem is that if you go back to the law, it's still providing protection for that patient to go to a different caregiver. The issue is that law enforcement and the judges want to come back now to these other caregivers and say, hey, just because that patient can get the medication from you doesn't make it legal for you to give it to them.
Just because you correctly assisted the patient does not mean
but because they're not registered to you through the department, you're not able. So I guess my question would be is if they sent in the change form and spent $10 with the state, then that makes it okay?
Good
I mean,
point.
In reality, I think the public needs to understand this because that's exactly what it would take to make that legal by their definition, not by anybody else's. So is that what the state is asking? Is for these distribution centers to simply be, filling out a form every time somebody else comes in and mailing it out, and then a change cancel form right there the next day when you want to change to someone else? I mean, it could be done if that's what a paper trail needs to have. But I think the key is that why are patients and caregivers being put through that? When if that's all it would be to take care of.
That's it. I mean, there's a huge gap, Jeremy, and you're identifying that big gap there. From when a patient becomes first qualified, I mean, there's a time span there when you've got to get a caregiver, they've got to get set up to grow your plants, or even if one already is set up and they just, there's still a time frame there where there's a gap where that patient can't get immediate access from the direct patient they're qualified with. So let's just look at the numbers you pointed out there. You got 50,000 caregivers, you got 180,000 patients. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, Jeremy. The caregivers of that 50,000 are taking care of the gaps and filling those gaps with all the other patients. There's no question that's happening. So if that is what's happening, isn't that by its very interpretation of under Section 4 the direct intent of the Act in its entirety? I mean, if the entirety of the Act is to help and assist patients with the qualifying condition of their medication, I would consider that a complete closed loop. Operation or cooperation or interaction. We think about this. Even the card holders themselves, the caregivers, need to be able to have a communication and codification between each other to be able to have interactions and transactions. Obviously, if a caregiver is good at one particular type of whether that be an isolated strain that they have, whether that be a genetic line that they want to give out, whether
or
that
even
be
a certain process that they
use to refine it.
That's right.
Exactly. Even at that, then we're talking about a caregiver's ability, which the law. Here's what just drives me insane about this: is that the law specifically states that the caregiver has the unquestionable right to acquire. Okay, so then how could then, and if you really look at it more deeply than that, it says, and I'm no attorney, but I'm just looking at it through a plain English interpretation, just as the Supreme Court ruling of 2012 stated that the voters were not tricked. It's a plain English interpretation of the law. That means that the average person should be able to, that knows English, should be able to read that act and interpret what it means. That doesn't mean you should have to go to an 8-year degree. And, you know what I mean?
Pass the bar exam.
Pass the bar exam to be able to know what that law says. And that's just so let's bring it down to the level of being straightforward and looking at it like that. If it's to be looked at like that, then fine. How could caregiver A and caregiver B not be able to have any transactions when clearly the license provides them both to be able to transfer, possess, manufacture, cultivate cannabis? So
there's no part in the law
of their interpretation.
There's no section in the law that carves out and says, okay, because you're registered to someone different, then none of these protections apply
to you. Right.
There's nothing in the law that says that.
Right.
Right.
And I've countless times law enforcement tries to say things that the law doesn't say, and that irritates me.
Wow.
I
think one of the things that
drives me crazy.
One of the court cases that had to actually, the judges referenced this part of the law because it does bring up a key point of it. When we have someone in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program that is a minor, they're under the age of 18 and they're looking to get medical marijuana for whatever the symptom is. First of all, they have to get 2 different doctors to sign off on it. If that happens, then they can get registered with the state and become a medical marijuana patient, even when they are a minor.
And then the parent has to be the caregiver.
By the state's law,
right.
The parent or guardian of that minor has to be the caregiver for that said patient.
Right. Only makes sense.
It puts that parent or guardian in a spot where now they're the person who has to provide that for the minor.
Right.
They may not necessarily be the person who is going to procure it.
Right.
So they have to have the ability inside of that to still acquire it from, i.e. said, another caregiver or maybe from another patient. And so this is something that
they have the legal right to acquire it from any source.
That's right. And that's what it was built for. So you have to consider that situation, and it was actually specifically carved out in the law. And I think when we look at those types of situations, you can see the need for why you have to allow one caregiver to be able to acquire from another caregiver. Correct. You have to be able to allow a patient to acquire from any source, really, because of the fact that you forget that they're using it for medicinal purposes. I think a lot of times our law enforcement completely pushes that argument aside and says this is strictly just for fun. It's just so that they can get high. It's, so we don't really have to really care about them actually needing what it is they say they need. And I think that we got to retract on that because some of these folks are going to have an extremely difficult time without their medication. Right. And so to legally start chopping up the ways that they can actually access it was not the point of the law.
No. And correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario. You correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but if I have, first of all, if I want to acquire new genetics by virtue of a clone or a plant, now I'm a legal caregiver. Now, aside from usable marijuana, is it illegal or is it in question, I guess, for the caregiver to transfer to me the plants, the clones, genetics in the first place? So I think that would be interpreted the same way because they're considering marijuana to be either the usable product or the dried plant, or they're considering. I mean,
and Eric, that's the thing.
Like seriously, think about that. I mean, like
this is a very.
I have a caregiver. I have a duty to meet my patient's obligations.
It's a very simple
I have
thing.
to get the genetics.
You have to get a start. You got to start.
I got to start somewhere. I got to get it.
A cutting.
Right.
Where does he get it from? How does he get that legally?
You're right. And how do I get that legally? I know that I'm protected because I'm the caregiver. I know that I'm protected, but I want to know that I'm dealing with a person and someone's not going to, the cop's not going to jump out of the bushes and go, whoa. you're okay, Eric, but the person just transferred you that clone is not okay.
Well, and essentially, that is exactly what is happening with these patients.
That impedes my safe access to be able to provide to my patient.
You're right, but I would point out that scenario is happening.
Exactly.
And that is exactly happening because what is happening is we have the patients who are trying to acquire their medication. They can't get it from their caregiver. Maybe they don't have a caregiver. Maybe their own stuff, they're producing their own, but it's not ready. So they go out and they get it from a licensed caregiver. But that licensed caregiver is now in trouble because he helped that person out and he wasn't registered to them. So the scenario that you just explained is happening over and over again on patient and caregiver sides. Yeah. And so you get this sort of gun-shy thing going on where someone's quasi-legal, doesn't know, whether or not they can do what it is they need to do. And I tell you what, as a patient or as a caregiver, how do you turn someone down medicinally who's supposed to be doing the right thing, but yet there's sort of this gray area of, am I doing the right thing here? Or am I supposed to be able to do this? Or, I mean...
and then in addition to that, think about... the acquisition of, I lost my train of thought about that. But I mean, initially, that's the same thing we're talking about because it limits safe access. We're talking about how can these things be considered crimes? It just blows my mind.
I'll tell you what. Let me bring this back around here. Get back to some of these numbers here because this was an interesting report, and it's one of the first updated ones we've seen in a while about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program and its participation levels. And I like the information that they put on here. I do want to point this out, though. Part of the article, it's talking about the concentration of medical marijuana patients versus population. So obviously you know that Wayne County is probably the most populous county in the state. And you would think that consequently it's going to have the most patients. It does. All right. But if you look at the total number of people that are in that county and then the number of people that are actually registered as patients, the percentage there is actually lower. And this article is pointing that out. It says at 42 patients per 1,000, Montmorency County has the state's highest concentration of medical marijuana recipients. Have you guys looked up Montmorency County lately? There's like 2 towns in the whole county, all right? You got Atlanta and Alpena. Wow. Other than that, look on the map. There's nothing there, all right? But at 42 patients per 1,000, that's probably... I don't know how many people are in that county, but it's probably 1,000 or something. I mean, it's got to be low. Beautiful place, so I'm not trying to badmouth it. It has a high concentration of patients, obviously. It says here, followed closely behind many of its neighboring counties, like Kalkaska, Lake Benzie, Roscommon, Aranac, Antrim, all in the northern lower peninsula. And they are all in the top 10 for most patients per 1,000 in Michigan. So kind of interesting that the more rural areas, the smaller, less populated areas, at least in the lower peninsula, have a higher concentration of patients. And I think that is a testament to, we see a lot of folks move up north, when they retire. They've been in the shop for 30 years, and now they're going to go up north and retire and live out their days. So I think I would be interested to know if the general population percentage, if there's a higher percentage of disabled people, in those counties as well, and see if there's any type of correlating information there. I'd be interested to know. But at any rate, that's some interesting info. It's kind of one other thing I wanted to point this out there, though. Getting back to the concentration. This is from the article. Wayne County is the most populated county in Michigan, logically has the highest number of registered patients at 24,949. So almost, probably after today, it's 25,000. Right. However, when adjusting for population, is one of the lowest concentrations of patients per 1,000 at 14.7. So that's interesting. It says it puts it at the 7th fewest in the state. Neighboring Oakland County, the second most populated county in Michigan, is only slightly higher with 15.07 for the 8th fewest. Now here's the interesting fact, and I think the G3C members are going to like this one. It says, in fact, of the major counties in Michigan, only Genesee, which is 4th in population, ranks in the top 10 of number of patients per 1,000 at 30.3. So that's the 9th highest in the state, and the rest of the top 10 most populated counties all fall in the lower half of the statewide ranking of patients per 1,000. So clearly there's a higher concentration of patients here in Genesee County as far as being a populated county and comparing it to others. Sure. Seems to be a bit of an anomaly, I guess, if you will. And I think that's a little bit of a testament to the administration of Genesee County. We've seen the county be more accepting of medical marijuana. We've seen them be more accepting of the businesses that have been associated with medical marijuana. And so therefore, I think people feel more adept, feel more safe about utilizing the program. Whereas in places like Oakland County that have been incredibly restrictive and gone after quite a few number of different patients and businesses, their participation rate is lower. So I think people naturally are going to feel less inclined to want to participate in the program. You know, they don't want to put their name on the list, kind of a thing. And we hear that. You know, I mean, it sounds silly, but it does. It happens all the time. You know, so why don't you get a card? You know, you're going to the doctor, you use marijuana. Why don't you get a card? I'm not putting my name on no list.
Yep.
And so there is an untrust of government, and I can't say I would fault that, but you know, I think that the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, I don't think there's probably more. Maybe there are more disabled people in Genesee County. Obviously, Genesee County is a factory town that's sort of been left behind. But nevertheless, obviously, we've got a large population of people that have spent a lot of time in hard labor, and a lot of folks that probably are disabled. So.
That's true.
I don't know. I think that probably a combination of the two is one of the reasons that Genesee County is ranked in the top 10 for patient population concentrations, you know, per 1,000. But you know, I think it brings us back to those questions about the medical marijuana law, about how do these patients access, how do they get their medicine, and how are the people that participate in this program legally protected by it, or are they even protected? You know, I think some folks feel like there is no protection.
And Jeremy, that's where I think the elected officials are the ones that need to step up to the plate on this one. I think that they have done a severe injustice to the residents and patients and caregivers of the state of Michigan. And I say this because I think it's the elected officials it's their priority. It should be their priority. It should be their objective, their purpose to uphold the will of the people. And when I look at the state of Michigan and its laws that get passed and things like that, when you look at the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, it was voted on by over 3 million people, more than any other thing that's ever been voted for in the history of Michigan. And, you know, no governor, no, you know, senator. And so when you look at that across the board with over a 63% majority, and we've said this so many times on this show over the last however many years we've been doing this show, you know what I mean? We've said it over and over and over again, but it is the elected officials' responsibility to step up to the plate and respect the will of the voters. Look at the overwhelming support of it. Look at the overwhelming support of even the. Let me just take it to a national level. Look at the overwhelming support on a national level across the nation now showing upwards of 60% average polling now of the Michigan, but the United States as a whole country moving toward legalization and adult use. That's simply a showing of the times that are changing. Look at the presidential debate platform. Marijuana legalization makes one of the top 10 discussions of both parties on the presidential campaign trail. Look at the most predominant campaign person moving forward in this whole thing, saying Bernie Sanders being the one to say, look, we need to deschedule marijuana. It doesn't belong there. Kids don't need to be getting arrested and having police records for something like that. Let's, bring an end to that. Let's, stop arresting people, putting people in prison, and let's start educating more people and so forth. These are look at the kind
of reforms we need.
The kind of it's we need a political revolution in this country.
Want to talk about
and we are at that point. In the elected officials, what I'm saying here is that the elected officials at all levels, local, county, high, state, it doesn't matter. Every elected official should be looking at the trends of the entire nation, looking at the polls, looking at the numbers, looking at the support, and do what the will of the people ask. Period.
I would agree. I think that our local legislation, speaking state, in reference to our state legislators, a lot of them, it seems that they're more interested in listening to the money than the people.
That's a big
there
problem.
is a poll here, though, I want to bring up. You're talking about numbers and polls. There was a recent poll that was just put on by Michigan Normal. Just came back the other day, and this is from the executive director of Michigan Normal, Matthew Abel.
Right.
His quote is, "To me, the poll actually underrepresents the real number of people who would truly vote for legalization, because some people just don't want to admit how they feel to a pollster."
Exactly.
And this poll that they put out has Michigan polling at 53%. I'm going to pull this up here.
Right.
Where did that number go? 53%? That's the old one. Well, that was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was 53. It's saying mid 50s, but
Right.
This is a poll. 50. There it is. 53%.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a poll put out by MI Normal, and they basically just, hey, would you legalize marijuana for adult recreational use? And the poll returned with a 53%. Yes, they would. So this number has been gradually increasing across the country and also here in Michigan. And, it seems like a lot of our legislators, while they are listening, they're sort of listening with a tongue-in-cheek sort of a deal.
Right,
well, as long as we get something out of this.
Right.
We've already seen a couple of different legislators say, well, yeah, I'll propose a legalization bill as long as you slap a big fat tax on it.
Right.
I don't think that it's not that it shouldn't be taxed. I just don't think that it should be excessively taxed.
Right.
I think that regulations should be put forth, and I think that we should have this discussion, but I think that it has to be done on a level where it involves local organic growth and not just growth for a few companies out there like some place that wants to come and take over the program from Canada.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, our legislators seem to be more in tune with special interest, big money groups than they do with trying to look out for people in the program. And we go back to these numbers again. We're talking 180,000 patients in Michigan, close to 50,000 caregivers. Now we're talking well over 250,000 people here in Michigan that are in the medical marijuana program. That is an economic factor that has to be considered. And so if you go and take that business out of the hands of all these people that it's currently in and go put it in the select few of a couple different private investors,
right.
How does that bode well for all these communities that now have these buildings and places that have now been leased and opened up, and the ancillary businesses that have come from them? They will all disappear, and we'll go back to having empty stores on Main Street. So obviously we don't want to have all these towns turned into pot towns. That's not what we're going for either. But
right.
I think we have to have smart regulation.
But also, let's recognize too. I think one of my colleagues on my board, mentioned to me, like she said, well, I don't want it to be, I don't want our community to be recognized as a marijuana community. And I said, well, let's just be real about this. I think our community always was a marijuana community. You just didn't know that because it was underground and illegal for so long. I mean, I went to Clio High School, and I can tell you right now that there was more weed in Clio High School than you can imagine back when I was graduating.
Your father would probably tell you the same thing if he went to that high school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just because the culture. Look, whoever wants to object to that can laugh or criticize all they want. But the fact of the matter is, many people use and love cannabis as a therapeutic or as a recreation, whatever they choose to use it for. But many people do that, and so many people don't know that other people do that simply because those people don't want to admit to it, or they have reasons.
And that's kind of like what Mr. Abel was referring
exactly.
to. Hey, these numbers would probably be even higher if everybody come out of the closet.
Exactly, and that's and that's the thing. And I think that when you. But let's look at those. Let's look at that 53% for a minute. That 53% also represents people that probably don't even smoke cannabis, that realize it's just a simple waste of money. They don't want to spend any more of their tax dollars on pursuing a victimless, nonviolent crime. So that's no way to treat people in our society. People are beginning to wake up and recognize that. Also, look at the financial waste. Let's cut that. Let's put that into something else. Look at our roads. When you say that. We've got redirect our tax dollars. Let's put it back into our roads. I mean, you could say, oh well, we need law enforcement, this and that. Yes, I understand we do, but let's not continue to over police ourselves when we can't, we're weaving all over the road, dodge the potholes. I mean, my word, man. I mean, it's just we need to do something, and I think that cutting back on that, especially. drug task force. I'd like to bring up to speed on a recent on the 14th of
Thetford Township.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken, you had a special meeting to decide whether or not you wanted to pay for additional drug task force enforcement.
Yes,
in your township,
right? And more specifically, the one known as FANG, and when we had a great community showing out that evening for that meeting. The county prosecutor David Layton was slated to be on the agenda to give a speech. He himself did not show up, but he did send Assistant County Prosecutor John Potberry and Assistant County Prosecutor Pat McComb. For those of you that don't know, Assistant County Prosecutor Pat McComb handles 95% of all the drug warrants, cases, and padlockings and dispensary raids of Genesee County. Pat McComb handles 95%, he said so himself at the meeting, of those cases. So, yes, the raid in Clio was handled by Assistant County Prosecutor Pat McComb. The one in Montrose was handled by him as well. These two prosecutors did come to our township hall meeting, and we did have a discussion with them. It was I thought it was a very pleasant discussion. No one got angry or upset. There was no shouting. There was no cursing.
I hope not.
Well, no, but I think that as I panned the crowd, and I say that because as I panned the crowd, I seen people in the audience that were very upset of the recent raids, that have had their stuff smashed, that have had their stuff taken, and that have not even been charged with a crime.
I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about between your township officials and the county ones.
Well, right, of course, no.
They're not yelling at each other.
Right, but I'm just saying there was some people, there was marijuana activists and community members of my community who were patients or caregivers that were in the audience.
That were definitely upset.
That were very upset about this, and it's very difficult to face someone like a county prosecutor who you're on the back of your mind, you're very upset with their policies and directives and how they've been handling things. You're not happy with it, and you wish that they would listen to you more, but you're in a situation like a township hall meeting. You're there to be a butt in a seat, to be present, to show not only your community leaders that that this subject matters to you and that you're being attentive to it because you want to point out anything that you see wrong. I think that's an excellent thing, and everybody should show up to the township hall meeting or their city council meetings, anywhere you're at. Go to your council meetings because your government serves you better when you are there to watch what they're doing. And let me give you a case point example of that night. They did not. None of my other colleagues on the board seemed to be able to tell me where the budget was of FANG, whether we adopted it or not. And I wanted to make it very clear. So had not everybody been there, I think they would have maybe given me a little bit more of a dog and pony show and sort of, not want to answer my questions. But when I kept persisting at the question, I said, is it in the budget or not? Because I want to know about it, because it's not something that I want my chief of police to decide on. It's not his decision whether we join FANG or not. It is this community's decision whether we join FANG or not, because it is this community's money that we're talking about. And those that have been elected to take care of and appoint appropriately with a due diligence of fiscal responsibility of people's money, we need to watch every single penny, and especially in my township where we are going broke, where we have pennies on the dollar, where we can barely afford the current police force that we already have. I do not see the additional need to hire additional outside unregulated task force. When I say unregulated, I mean they don't answer to anybody in the county. And I asked Pat McComb that specifically at the meeting, and I said, who does FANG answer to? Well, if they're not a member of the state police, they're not a faction of any local police. Well, and they don't work, and the county is not employing them. Well, then who do they work for? Well, then who do they answer to? Well, then. And he clearly said, it's a state-run thing at the Capitol where the state police and some other, jurisdictional police get together and they huddle and they talk about it. Okay, fine. Well, who do they answer to? Well, I can't seem to get a question with that one. I can't seem to get an answer with that. So my opinion is, and here's my point, that if in our township, if we have a chief of police, if he does something. You know what I mean? Or if anything at all,
he's accountable to the township.
He is accountable to the township, and he can come before that township's board of direct elected officials in that community, and he has to answer to us. This other agency does not. So whether we apply or whether we say dispensaries or compassion centers are permissible or not permissible, either way, we have no say-so in the matter, and so I see no point in hiring an additional outside task force on top of the one we already need when our current police force has everything covered. I asked him if there's been any meth labs in the history of our township. He said none. So I'm saying that it's, whatever other excuse they're telling me they're coming into my township for, I'm not buying it, because we've never had a meth lab. So I don't see the point in hiring Fang to come in and cover or clean up meth labs. If I had an epidemic of that in my community, well, then I might take a closer look at it, certainly.
Sounds like a bridge to nowhere.
Right, it's a bridge to nowhere. So why am I paying additional? And we're talking $7,400, and $7,400 may not be a lot of money to maybe the community of Flint Township or Burton Township, but to my township of Thetford, that's a lot of money. A lot of money that we could use to fix a bridge that we currently have out that the fire department cannot cross to get to the houses on the other side. So I think that is a priority, not medical marijuana or marijuana. And as the prosecutor alluded to,
or in your case, what you're pointing out is enforcing something that doesn't need enforcement.
It doesn't. There's not been any.
It would be like
there's not been any serious.
You got a road.
Even with the medical marijuana.
You got M57 right through there. You know what I mean?
Right. We got M57. We got
if you had guys that were driving 100 miles an hour every day on that road, you'd need to do something about that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Let's put more police out there. Let's put the speed limit sign posted.
But you don't go put all those police out there when you don't extra police.
Right.
When you don't have that issue.
Problem.
Right. Same thing here.
Same thing applies here.
Or we need to go buy 3 more fire trucks.
Right.
Well, have the fires gone up?
Right. No. Exactly. Okay. And on top of that, my community came out at a public hearing stating, the overwhelming majority stating, that they did not want additional police services. So for my community leaders, my colleagues on the board, to then tax the community in addition, taking more money from them, $75 per household, in fact, and then taking that money, suggesting that we have to pay for the current police department, but instead we're going to take that money and also we're going to increase the police department, and we're going to hire another police service and on top of that, when we were told by the public at a public hearing, overwhelming majority, that we didn't want that, and in addition to a 2007 vote in my community that said we did not want additional law enforcement services, and no thank you, we're not going to pay for that. So there is historical precedence that my community does not want that, did not ask for that,
or feels what they have is adequate.
Feel that what we have is adequate. So why are my elected officials and my colleagues on the board pushing that forward? I don't know, but on April 25th, there will be a continuance at my township hall meeting where members of FANG, the officers themselves, will come out to my township on April 25th to discuss this further. And at that township meeting, everyone in the medical marijuana community is certainly welcome to come out and voice their opinions, their concerns, or ideas, share their ideas at the podium. You'll have 2 minutes at the beginning of every meeting, and you'll have 2 minutes at the end of every meeting to give a discussion at the podium. I will ask that maybe possibly 1 or 2 speakers, one of them being a gentleman from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. I'm going to ask to be there as well, and also another elected official from Montrose, Mayor of Montrose, Ray Faust. Okay. So I'm going to ask them to come there and give a bit of a testimony on that, and because I really think that my colleagues need to see the other side of this. They need to see that the interactions of the patients and caregivers of the current system we have are there and in place to help one another, and that for the most part, if you interpret the act and for its general purpose, everyone that has a license, look, they're dealing with people that have licenses. They should be considered legal and operating within the guidelines of the program.
I think so. Now, obviously, there's going to be exceptions to those rules, and in the law, there are special additional penalties for breaking those rules.
Sure.
So if you've got a caregiver who's gone haywire and now he's trying to sell baggies in the church parking lot,
right?
Or he's down at Cortland Center Mall sitting on the bench and he's just slinging weed to whoever walks by.
Cops can go arrest him.
Obviously, he's not protected,
right?
And he should receive an additional penalty for abusing the program on top of penalties for being a drug dealer.
Exactly.
Nobody's arguing that,
right?
And we're talking about people who are, like you said, registered card holders. Officially have gone through the program, gone to the doctor, using it for legitimate purposes. That's what we're talking about here.
Right.
I guess I have a question for you in regard to the FANG enforcement, and you had a question for them about their budget. My question to them would be, could we see some sort of statistics to show like what type of results have been attained by their forces. You know, like for example, like how many of their, I assume that they're narcotics enforcement group, right? Do they deal with any other type of crime other than drug crimes? If so, how much of a percentage of that is their work?
Right. Like,
and then of the percentage of their drug crime,
how much is heroin? How much is crystal meth? How much is right?
That's what I guess.
Give me a breakdown. And I actually asked specifically these questions too.
Can they?
I actually asked these specific.
Go outside of the realm and try to stop human trafficking or something like that.
Right. I actually asked these questions specifically of Pat McComb at the meeting. And first question I asked him was, well, how many, given the fact that you do 95% of these cases, how many have you had in the last 5? I said, first I asked him, I said, of cocaine, heroin, crystal meth, marijuana, and pills, what do you see the most of? What do you see the most of? And he said, heroin and crystal meth, and then, we're at the top along with cocaine, and then cocaine he said was in the middle, and he said marijuana and pills were at the bottom. He said, but, you oftentimes, he said there's doctors, involved in that. That's when I asked him. I said, well, in the last 5 years, you've obviously had cases like this, but I said, in the last 5 years, have you had cases where where Fang has brought cases before you over a marijuana charge, but then during the case development, there was introduced evidence of medical marijuana, either by cards or by association or the defense? Have you had those kind of cases in the last 5 years? And he said yes. And I said, okay, on average, how many per year do you have like that? And he said, well, it varies, and he didn't give me a clear answer on that one. But he obviously has had these cases. I know he's had these cases.
Certainly.
That are oftentimes dismissed based on the fact that there wasn't, the people really weren't acting outside the law. And that's what I want to get back to, and that's our interpretation. Really, when you're not...
defense, I do want to mention, because we already talked about him on the show already, the Clio caregiver connection. Sure. I did want to mention on the show as well, though, there have been no charges filed as of yet.
No.
So these raids were conducted. I don't know. It says here there was items seized, such as medicine, plants, money, but there have not been any, as of reporting this, there haven't been any charges filed. So, it's hard in this country. Obviously, we're innocent until proven guilty, right? Mm-hmm. But in a lot of these busts like this we're never seeing charges actually be filed. We just see a raid, we see things being shut down or padlocked in this case. We see, the asset forfeiture going on. And oftentimes we don't see charges behind that. And that could be where you're talking about, Eric, where there was this fine line between whether or not someone was actually in the program or not, or were they operating within the program's guidelines or not. And so there can be sometimes, I think, some
and then he alluded,
discretion at the prosecutorial level.
He did allude
for them to say, well,
there's...
These people are the kind of people we do want to go after, or these are the kind of people that we don't want to go after.
Right, but then there was...
it's just like the cop who sits on the side of the road and says, oh, that guy's doing 60 into 55, I let him go. This one's doing 65.
Sure.
But his bumper's hanging off and he's not paying attention.
Right. It's just like, and Pat McComb did mention, Assistant County Prosecutor Pat McComb did mention that they do use a degree of prosecutorial discretion, and I understand that. And with all respect to David Layton's office, I think he has done a pretty fine job of that, given the scope of what we've seen in other cases.
Well, and as he said,
for the most part,
his quote was, "I'm just doing what the law says. I'm kind of stuck here. You guys." Legislators, judges need to do a better job.
And I've spoken to David Layton about this before, and we can both agree on that one. But let's these cases, like for example, the prosecutorial discretion, like for example, a good friend of mine, Jim Powers, director of Parents for Compassion. He has a son, and he is a caregiver for his own son, who's a pediatric medical marijuana patient.
Okay.
7 years old. He said, he was able to directly ask the question to Assistant County Prosecutor Pat McComb, and he said, well, look, he says, in my particular case, he says, given the fact that we have the Carruthers decision right now, which is giving you the interpretation that concentrates and so forth, illegal, what would you do for my case, in my particular situation, since I'm the caregiver for my son, do you expect me to let my son smoke marijuana? And he said, well, no, of course not. He said, well, under the Carruthers decision, what you're saying is that if I don't force my son to smoke and I use a concentrate form of any kind or extraction of any kind, that I'm all of a sudden acting illegal. And then, of course, that's when Pat McComb said, well, we could use a sense of a level of prosecutorial discretion. And, and that's fine. But then, on top of what Jim was saying, what then does it have? Because like what you said earlier about the parent having to acquire for their child, they're trying to get immediate care for their child. That's the objective. Well, then how you're putting now, are you going to use the same prosecutorial discretion for the caregiver who provided it for the parent?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, can we have the prosecutorial discretion for that? Can we have prosecutorial discretion for a lot of things? Right. Why hasn't more prosecutorial discretion been exercised throughout the Medical Marijuana Act since its inception? And so I think when you put it to terms like that, then I think, what Pat McComb is saying, that the discretion is not so helpful in the most of our things, and that's why I think we need to. Well, and we've got to push forward. We've got to fight back. We've got to get to our hold of our elected officials, and we've got to persuade them the best we can, everybody, to see the light on this and change these barbaric and socially offensive and socially corrosive policies. We've got 2 minutes left, man. I want to talk about hash bash a little bit.
All right, let's wrap it up with that because we have 2 minutes left.
All right.
And I did mention it earlier on the show. I know that we've got.
I'm going to be a speaker this year at Hash Bash.
I was just going to ask, are you speaking at Hash Bash?
I am speaking at Hash Bash.
Excellent.
I am speaking at Hash
Excellent.
Bash. It is going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it.
Eric Gunnels.
Yes.
Speaking, Township Trustee, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mayor
Tommy Chong.
Yeah. We got a whole stage of elected officials. You know that.
I just want to say your name next to Tommy Chong.
Oh yeah, Tommy Chong.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck yeah. Please do.
Darren McCarty.
Yes.
He's going to be there as well. Now, who else we got?
Dan Sky.
Okay.
There's another list. Well, the elected officials: Representative Jeff Irwin, Ann Arbor City Councilwoman Reed.
Is he a senator now? Senator?
No, he's still a state rep.
State rep. Okay.
Yep, Rep Irwin and City Councilwoman Sabriere Briere. I think that's her name. I'm not sure how to pronounce that entirely. But yes, Mayor Ray Faust, and then myself. And so
fantastic.
We're and Mayor Virg Bonero from Lansing. So
there we go.
A stage. Every year we've had more elected officials to the stage of Hash Bash. This year I'll be a new addition to the stage of Hash Bash, another elected official. I think that speaks volumes, Jeremy. That speaks overwhelming volumes. I think it does, because the more you see, pretty soon, hey, let's get a whole lineup where it's all elected officials talking from Hash Bash, and that sends a clear message to our other colleagues. They're all their colleagues on every level of government, and that's why what my message this year is too, is to also encourage people to run for public office. You have until April 19th to register to file for public office. I encourage everybody to do that.
That's a good point, Eric. Eric's actually a good example of somebody who just stood up in his community, felt inspired, and felt passionate about politics and the people that were in his community, and started busting his tail, got educated on it, and got it done. You know what I mean? And he's a prime example of what anybody out there can really do if you put your mind to it. And being involved in your community, you don't realize how influential you can be until you start taking part, and you don't realize how simple the process is until you start to get into it. So I would encourage you not to be intimidated or afraid, but in the areas that you live in is where it is that your opportunity lies. And I would encourage you to do that. I mean, and it's not.
Thanks.
Everybody says go out and vote, but you know what? If you really want to get into it, go out and run for something.
Right.
And we talk about these township meetings that you should take part in and that you should witness. You should take part and witness them, not just because you should be a part of it, but also so that you can see some of the antics and some of the monkey show that goes on behind these boards, behind these chairs that we have in government. And if you saw some of that, you'd probably be all that much more motivated to say, you don't belong in that chair.
Right.
I do.
Right.
And I'd encourage you to check that out.
Yes.
So, I know we're running out of time here, so I'm going to wrap things up.
With that, thanks very much for the compliment, Jeremy. I also want to say this, that
thank
you've
you,
also
Eric.
been a great influence on me too, Jeremy. So you've helped inspire me to be what I've become. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we'll inspire some of you guys out there to do the same thing.
I hope so.
Thanks for being with us on the Genesee County Compassion Club show, and thanks for joining us at allpointstv.com. Please check out all of our podcasts and videos. You can check them out on YouTube and on Comcast and on the internet. All right? Guys, have a wonderful week, great spring, and we'll catch you here next time on
See you
the
next
Genesee County
batch.
Compassion Show.